you're entering into one point which is central to the work that we're trying to do. See, as I told you before, we don't want to talk directly to the general public. We are talking to the journalists.
Yeah.
The journalists for us are those who are in contact with the public. Yeah. You know, one of the basic principles of development work is empowerment. But we noticed that generally, when there is goal in communication, international institutions, government, or even NGOs, they try to talk directly to the public and skip those which are normally the communicators which are trusted to the public. Mm. So the whole idea of this project is to change a partner and say we want to empower those communicators that are trusted to the public and not try to win over the public.
Yes.
And we don't want to win over the journalists. We just want to empower them to talk about what is being done, yeah, because we want them to evaluate. Yeah. And we want their role to be a fundamental role in the dialogue with the public. Yeah. And so they have to be aware, yeah, of the efforts we are, let's say we, as I'm, yeah, talking about as NGO, but we are trying to make, yeah, for the, and then evaluate us. Yeah. But then I find that exceptionally open, let's say, yes, we would like to come on board. What I find that somehow is missing is the knowledge, the preparation of the average newsmakers, yes, about dealing with these issues. Yes. It's not just lacking data, but it's just lacking the overall awareness, yes, because sometimes they do not consider themselves really as evaluators. They are, yes, happy just with denouncing. Yes. Oh, this is wrong, so we denounce it, or see how, yeah, but then they don't denounce it to whom, yeah, who is taking care of what. Yeah. Yeah. So the whole aspect of evaluation work, yeah, which is something that I think would be very much needed. Yeah. I think that would be about enabling, yeah, media, yeah, to do a fair evaluation, and that is a long process. Yeah. Now, one of the points which I find sometimes difficult to convey, and maybe you can help me to give some ideas, is about going beyond some sort of stereotype. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong. Mm-hmm. But one of the points which normally journalists would say is to make a differentiation between the money which is available to the market and the money which is available to the government. Mm. So there is a general idea that yes, but if we are spending for the state, this is money that's taken out of the pockets of the people. Mm. And I'm not an expert of yeah, economy, but I would think in a bit differently. Yeah. I would think that there is something that we buy individually, and there is something we buy as a community. Yes. So that's the market. The market is made up, yeah, of what we all buy as individuals, yes, like the petrol for our car, yeah, and the money and the money that we all buy as community, like for instance making roads. Yes. No, both these goes to the market. Goes, yes, both these, yes, to acceleration of the economy. Yeah. What we buy as a community is not money taken out of the market. Yeah. It's just money put in the market as a common expenditure. Yeah. The whole issue is not about how much money should be given to the market and how much money should be given to the state. The whole issue is how many things we should buy as individuals and, yes, how many things we should buy as a community. Yes. What is the best advantage? Yes. But naturally the money that the government spends goes to the market as much, yes, as the money as the private, yes, people spend. So now, well, this is, I don't find that it's easy to explain. Because it's so much, for instance, in Italy, a lot of government, the present government advertising is that, oh, we are spending, so far, people are being taxed, let's say, 45% of their earning, and that is all money that is not given for development of the economy. Yeah. well, it doesn't fit my scheme. So, am I wrong in thinking that the differentiation has not to be made about money available to the state and money available to the public, but about this different kind of differentiation? And how can we use, for instance, this documentary to explain this?
Yeah, I think it's a fundamental question, because a lot of people, particularly taxpayers, feel that the government has taken away my money and they're not giving me any services in return. And I suppose in the developed countries there's also the question of taking the money and sending it abroad. When your own people are suffering, you're sending money to other countries. Can you afford to do it?
Yes.
So that's another issue. So the taxpayer in a developed country is very conscious of asking for his right to know whether the money is being spent well abroad, what is happening, and so what is the impact, and so on and so forth. And I think there's a fundamental issue here. One is, of course, central to the point that you make is very important, that it is very important for every society to recognize what is the legitimate role of the government. Yes, there are private goods and services in private markets. So like you say, you can buy petrol, you can buy orange juice, you can buy shoes, you can buy clothes. So that's where the private markets function. But there are several areas where the private markets will not function. And this happens, one, when there are a lot of what economists call externalities, when the public benefits are not captured by this. Schooling, basic schooling is a classic example. Schools can be provided by the private sector. But if you leave it to the private sector and say that only those children whose parents can afford the fees can send their children to school and others can't, you will find that not all children go to school. So there is a huge social benefit attached to it, saying that all children should go to school. We need a fully literate society. So you see a role for the government there. But there are also other goods which are called public goods, where they have to be provided, but nobody will be willing to pay for it. Take clean air. The environment is a classic example. Who's going to pay for clean air? If you leave it to the market, nobody will. Clean drinking water. How do you prevent pollution? How do you look at the impact of climate change? So the whole field, in the field of environment, what are called public goods, if you go and ask people, are you willing to, should India conserve its forests? Yes, we must conserve our forests. How much will you be willing to pay to conserve the forest? Oh, why should I pay anything? So, do you want the beach to be clean? Yes, I want the beaches to be clean. How much will you pay to keep the beach clean? Oh, you'll say, why should I pay? So people really forget, and I think that's a very important point, that many things that we value in life and we enjoy because of these collective benefits have to be provided by the state. So the market, private individuals won't contribute. The question is therefore, how does the state provide? It has to be forcibly done through taxation. And so the government has to constantly, and therefore when it comes to accounting for your effect, you have to constantly say, hey, listen, this is what we are doing with your money in your own country. And that sense of accountability is missing, is not strong enough in many countries. Because they are not able to say with great confidence that, listen, the quality of the environment has improved. And this is what we have done. The quality of schooling has improved. This is what we have done. Which means that you really have to go back to what we were saying, that you need both an accounting of inputs, it's not just where money is being spent, but an accounting for outcomes and development outcomes. That's very important. And I think in terms of the earlier question you asked about the journalist and the communication, it is absolutely a missing element. Everywhere. You have fantastic research institutions. You may have a fantastic consulting company doing an evaluation. What happens? They are not good communicators. It is impossible to read a 500-page report and tell you what is it that they are saying. Some of it is very technical. So who is going to take the reports that are produced both by the government on performance or by an evaluation group on outcomes and communicate it in a manner that people can understand? In fact, many times they don't do it. I almost think it's a conspiracy there. Because nobody wants to say anything bad, so you just keep quiet, you submit the report, you collect the money and you go home. Sometimes they say the research institution should have a budget for dissemination. But the research institution is not a competent and qualified communicating agency. Why do you think that the best researcher, social scientist, is also the best public communicator? It should not be, need not be. So that gap of how do you take these evaluations and reports and ideas is a missing element. And in India, for instance, the UN has been trying to do workshops. Many NGOs do workshops for journalists, not only in the Indian language, but in the regional languages, to take these reports, take the MDGs, and we have, in fact, I have participated in several of these workshops done by UNDP on what is the MDG, why is it so important. Then UNICEF over the years organizes visits for journalists to see the projects. So there is this whole point of distilling the information, making it easy for the journalists to understand, absorb, taking them to the projects to see what is happening for them together. But there is a more fundamental problem with the media at this point of time, which we must not ignore, which is that there is very little interest in the media to cover these issues. And it has to do with the patterns of ownership and the profit motive of the media. When I say that the media industry in India is expanding rapidly and it's got several millions and billions of dollars invested, they are going by the profit motive. So very good journalists working in these media houses will find it very difficult to consistently report on anything like the MDGs. Why? Because the editorial staff will say, come on, who wants to hear about these things? Who is interested about child malnutrition? Who is worried about domestic abuse and domestic violence? The paper has to have good news. People, my average reader wants to, when he's in the car, he wants to say, hey, new car introduced and new cosmetics have come in and the new mall is open. This is what they want to hear. They want to hear sensationally good news when they get up in the morning. Not bad news every day. So one of the things which we started talking about is that when the media, when agencies like UNDP, UNICEF take the journalists, they are telling them about what are positive things happening on the ground. Where have communities really worked together with the government, with local governments to transform the situation and improve their own conditions of life? That is the element of empowerment, that people themselves, in working in partnership with a number of agencies at the community level, have made a remarkable change to the way the conditions of life. So those stories need to be brought in much more strongly, and that requires both distillation of effective, strong evaluations into simple messages, taking the journalist to the next step of actually identifying the project so that he can go or she can go and interview and see for yourself what is happening, and to encourage the media also to say, hey, listen, good news, people are interested in good news. They want to know what is happening in India. For instance, I'll give you an example. We have over 600, 700 million mobile phones ownership in India. It has changed communication in this country in unbelievable ways. If you travel in Bihar today, the roads have remarkably transformed Bihar. And the benefits of the roads is going in terms of the marketability of products. The incomes of farmers have gone up, the incomes of people have gone up. It's easier to get to school, it's easier to get to a health facility. When I say the government health facilities are being increasingly used even in a state like Bihar, it's because roads have come in there. In half an hour you can reach a health center. They're fantastic. So this kind of silent revolution, silent transformations are happening. With the mobile phone today, every health-seeking behavior is changing. If my child is not well, I can call somebody and ask, what should I do? Earlier you were stuck in the village, not knowing what to do. So it's changing the way Indians are thinking. It's a very strong transformation taking place. Women are now participating in panchayat elections. India in 93 brought in a constitutional amendment where it said that 1/3 of the seats in local governments at the village level should be reserved for women. Some states have even made it 50% for women. In the last 15 years, more and more women have come into the political sphere. Initially, the thought was, oh, these women are going to be dummies sitting there because it's such a male-dominated society. They can't read and write, so their husband will be sitting alongside and running the meeting. It's changing, dramatically changing. Because these women come in there and they say, okay, we are taking the decisions on local funds that have come in. what should be the priority of the community. And increasingly we find that women's priorities have to do with making life simpler for them. They're worried about food, they're worried about water, they're worried about fuel wood. They have to walk hours to get fuel wood to cook. They want their children to get decent schooling. They want to ensure that the school teacher is there. The issues are very different. So many women panchayats, as they are called, the village councils, are playing an important role. Now this is fantastic transformation that's taking place, which you will not pick up at the national level. They're not reported enough. And so this balance has to come in, but that is to come in only if there is this kind of investment in the communicator. In terms of what is the evaluation showing, what is the good news story, and do a balanced portrayal. Recognizing that it is a struggle for the journalist in a media house where there is overall, it's not going to sell the newspaper, but there is a social obligation of the media, that they are significant players today in influencing public thinking, in shaping social attitudes, in shaping and setting the development agenda. So the media has to rise above their narrow profit-minded profit orientation to say we have a larger social purpose. And that used to be, and that should be, the goal of the media, to really influence public priorities, influence public thinking, influence public debates, because that's the only forum. So I think there's a critical role, but it has to be matched by these two interventions. How do you get the information in a better distilled, clear, simple way, and how do you then feed in from the community level successful interventions that are making a difference? And I think that's critical.